Welcome to Future Takes, a series where we ask people about their views on a more reconciled island of Ireland in the future. And today I'm joined by international motivational speaker, explorer and author Mark Pollock. Mark, it's great to meet you. How are you?
Great.
What a life you lead. It's quite extraordinary and inspiring how you've turned huge challenges around to your advantage through your work. And now you live to help others, because you were blinded at 22 and then a few years later a fall from a second story window left you paralysed. But in both cases, Mark, you faced the challenges head on. Can you tell me how you did that?
I think now looking back, going blind age 22 in 1998, then breaking my back in 2010, I probably could give you a nice little soundbite answer. But of course it was an iterative process. I'm now interested in resilience. I'm interested in what happens when we adapt. I'm interested in performance, and I'm interested in how do we deal with challenges not on our own but rather with other people. So resilience, performance and collaboration are the themes that I now know have guided me along the way. I don't think I knew when I went blind how it was going to be. I just had to recreate my identity and find a new identity, and then I had to do it again after I broke my back.
Mark, when I think of 1994, 30 years ago, there was an awful lot happening in the political landscape in the North. Possibly you and I weren't very aware of because of the age we were more interested in what's the next step in life. But having lived away from Belfast for 30 years, in Dublin, in other places, as you've mentioned, does that change your perspective on up there, up home in the North?
I didn't see myself as really being affected by the troubles in any way. But when I came to Trinity, there were, I think it was it must have been a qualification tournament for some football match, and there were Irish flags flying everywhere. And I remember at the time, because I could see, that I felt very uncomfortable with the flags, because the flags were essentially IRA flags to me. Now, not explicitly, but just I had that feeling, and I thought, well, that is very clearly indicating to me that I was affected. The symbols did mean something. Maybe there was a bit of fear there of what that meant, but of course they weren't IRA flags. They were the national flag of the country supporting a football team. So it was ridiculous. And I remember thinking about that at the time. I had a British passport only at the time. And now, 30 years on, I've got a British passport, I've got an Irish passport. I've rowed for Ireland, I've rowed at the Commonwealth Games. I support Irish teams, I support Great Britain and Northern Ireland in the Olympics. I'm a bit of everything and nothing, because when I went to the South Pole, for example, I didn't bring a national flag at all. I brought a flag that had the faces of all the people who had supported us.
Going to school in Belfast, Mark, you went to Inst. Did you feel segregated, separated from people of different traditions, religions in any way when you were growing up, or is that something you recognised later in life?
I think I recognised it, and I've thought about it much later in life. It seems ridiculous to me now that we should be trying to bring people together, yet for the first 18 years of our lives, schooling is largely separated.
Do you think subconsciously that that experience of even understanding that there were differences, there were degrees of separation there, do you think that informed you in any way as a person as you were growing up?
I kind of looked through it in the lens of sport. I knew nothing about Gaelic games until I came to Trinity, except seeing Jerome Quinn presenting the championship on BBC Northern Ireland and turning it off, which is a strange reaction. I've actually since met Jerome Quinn, and I said that to him.
Why did you turn it off?
Because it represented, consciously or or unconsciously. I didn't know the sport, so I wouldn't be following it. That was number one. But I think it was probably worse than that. I think Gaelic games represented the other side, of which I've already stated I didn't think that I had any involvement in. So subconsciously, I was on one side and not the other, and I turned it off. But I've spoken to Jerome, and surprise, surprise, he likes more than Gaelic games.
Sport, particularly, Mark, can be perceived in many ways. Some see it as divisive, others see it as a great unifier. What is your take on identity in sport?
I think my own take on identity has come from my own experiences, which is not about flags and not about emblems. It's about who am I whenever I could see and walk. While I was studying, I was rowing, then I went blind and I didn't think I could do any of these things. And then I was able to go and get a job, I was able to study, I was able to socialise, I was able to become an adventure athlete, racing in deserts and mountains and oceans, and eventually race to the South Pole. And then I broke my back and again had to question, who am I? If I'm not an adventure athlete anymore, who am I? And now I'm exploring the intersection where humans and technology and investment collide to try and cure paralysis in our lifetime. For me, identity is based on what we do, our actions, not our words.
In terms of leadership going forward, what do you think is required and from whom as we look towards having a more reconciled Ireland?
I've had to think about how we deal with challenges, whether I have chosen them or they've chosen me. And I've looked at neuroscience and psychology and philosophy, and I kind of boiled it down to a cycle of facts, acceptance and hope. And when any challenge appears, what I try to do is do a facts inventory, the good, the bad and the ugly. The second thing that I try to do is to accept what I can and can't control. And the third point I think we absolutely must have is hope. We've got to have something to go for. Sometimes it takes a much longer time frame than we might expect. And it's got to be way, way more ambitious than our own agendas. Hope's got to be grand, it's got to be audacious, it's got to be exciting, and it's got to be something that we can all get behind and leaves enough room for all of us to win.
Mark, you've given us so much to think about today. It's been wonderful to talk to you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.